Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you have questions, you can ask them in Makana, of course. You can ask those questions. You can vote on the questions. You can talk about the questions. But if you're not in Makana, it's okay. You can use askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. You can use the QR code there. And you can jump in. You can ask those questions 24/7, and then we'll feed them into the next show. Sometimes we'll feed them into the same show. So if you're watching right now, whenever now is for you, go ahead and throw your questions in. We've got a great panel here. This is audio day. And so that means that we've got some great experts here for audio questions. We can answer other questions as well. But if you've got audio questions, this is a great day to do it. So let's go ahead and throw it to Bill for the questions.
Absolutely. First one coming in this morning from Zachary Sorensen in Warwick, Queensland, Australia. And Zachary says, I'm looking for doing a trial at my local church, putting a digital audio workstation setup in to improve our live stream audio. We have a DANTE network. If I use DANTE virtual sound card to get it into the DAW, can I send it back out with the virtual sound card, or will we need another app or equipment?
Good morning.
Absolutely. You should be able to send your mix output from the DAW back through Dante into your mixer. You'll want to make sure that your routing is set properly, of course. Using a DAW to do a mix can be very effective. You have a lot of options there with plugins and different things, processes that you could apply. You'll want to make sure that when it gets back to the computer for streaming, that your audio and video are synced up properly. One thing I would highly, highly recommend is that you do a lot of testing before you put this up live. You want to, use it for rehearsals. I would use it for a couple of rehearsals because different events and different ways your church programs itself can, have different implications for how you mix and what you mix. And you might want to think about groupings and busing and different things in the DAW, just like you would do in a console, and think about how you're going to control the levels and parameters in your DAW. Do you have a hardware fader bank, a user interface, a hardware user interface? That would be very helpful and much faster than trying to navigate doing a mix with a mouse.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, definitely. Like, to answer your question, you can send audio into your DAW through DVS and out of your DAW through DVS as well. Though I would recommend against using a DAW that uses does processing on the computer CPU. I would go with a DAW that does processing on dedicated DSP chips and also has its mix engine on dedicated DSPs. Also be aware that running audio through a general purpose CPU, like for example, just using Logic or a DAW that does the processing within the computer's processor, you will encounter latency, and I would definitely would not. I would advise against putting that mix out on the front of house PA system, and definitely do not put that mix on monitors, because that will just drive your musicians and the folks on stage crazy with the amount of latency that's going back to their monitors. And as Marty said, test.
Watch for clocking. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Roger Slater in San Antonio, Texas, and he notes, I've been enjoying the Analogues performing Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, and The End of Late. Can anyone identify the 4 microphones with extension tubes being used? And he's got a link there to it. And by the way, that's our second of the 4 QR codes first in here today.
Go ahead, Bill.
So I noticed in the chat here behind the scenes for the crew that Dave Troutman identified those and said the mics in question are the AKG C28, 29, C30 series. They came with the V28C preamp and the C28 capsule, the VR28 extension tube, which was 33 centimeters, and the VR30 extension tube, which was 100 centimeters. That kind of comports with what I saw. It looks like those were long extension tubes on them, so that may be a definitive answer, although let's see.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, they to me look like. Let me cut to this. Look like a DPA floor stand that uses their modular capsule series. I don't know exactly what capsules inside that windshield, but the stand itself looks like a DPA's floor stand microphone accessory. Could also possibly be the Colette series from Sheps, though it looks more like the DPA ones.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Lois Richter in Davis, California. If I screw 150-watt light bulbs into a strip with one plug, how much electricity would they use? Would 100-watt bulbs use twice the electricity? If I kept increasing the wattage, how would it fail? And would nothing work? All dim or 99 okay? Last not?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, your house would catch on fire probably because I don't know where you're going to find 50-watt light bulbs these days because they're all LEDs and they're much lower wattage than that. 50 watts times 100 light bulbs would be 5,000 watts, which would be 41.6 amps at 110 volts. So you would need a 50-amp breaker on that. Most homes are not equipped with that. They usually only carry 20-amp breakers per each single plug. So you'd probably blow the breaker. They wouldn't dim out. They would just blow the breaker. And you'd have to make sure that your wiring is up to handling that on the other side of the plug was capable of handling 50 amps. So you need some pretty heavy wiring to handle that if you do have a 50 amp breaker. So, and then of course, 100-watt bulbs would take twice that. So it'd take 10,000 watts total. So that'd be a 100-amp breaker, which is pretty rare outside the movie industry. So that's the situation you keep in. If it's rated as the amount of lumens, if it's an LED bulb, typically, a 50-watt LED bulb, what's a 50-watt equivalent on an LED bulb is only about 6 or 7 watts, actually. So you'd be consuming a lot less energy if they're LEDs. If they're tungsten bulbs, and you can find 50-watt tungsten bulbs, that's what you'd be looking at, a big breaker.
I got Marty.
Ohm's law says that watts equals volts times amps. And if you're looking at how many amps that would take, it would be watts over volts. So as Courtney said, that would be about 42 amps, except when you initially turn them on, there is an inrush current, which can be twice as high. It will be brief, but it will pull a whole lot more current. So you need to be sure that your breaker is rated to handle the inrush current. So it would be a 100-watt, 100-amp breaker that you'd want to have on there, or something close to it. If they're LEDs, you're pulling a lot less current for the similar amount of light output, and so that would be in your favor.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Courtney and Marty gave a very good summary on it, but I just want to stress the fact that the current rating or the amount of current being pulled is dependent on, since we have a set amount of wattage of power, the amount of current would be dependent on the voltage. And Courtney mentioned earlier, I believe 110 or 120 volts for I guess North American power, but this would vary from region to region.
And how would that vary if it was 220?
So, volts times amps equals watts. So, say 110 volts if you're drawing 10 amps. If it were at 220 volts, which would be double the voltage, it would just be half the amount of current. So, say your wiring requirements would differ there. Of course, your circuit breakers would differ there. And I also just want to add that most likely the first thing that would fail in this chain of power is the power strip, because that should be the one that's rated the lowest. That power strip, its fuse should blow before tripping the breaker or stressing the wiring of your home or your building.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. I'm looking to output 4K signals from Propresenter 7 on a Mac using the Sonnet enclosure into a 2ME 4K. What decklink cards should I be looking at versus what is overkill? Thanks.
Mickey?
So yeah, for this, since you require UHD or 4K outputs, I'd probably go for the decklink 8K Mini Pro. This would give you 4 bidirectional connections on it. And since I typically do not design or build systems that run at 100% out of the get-go, I would probably recommend getting 2 of these so that you're running at 50% capacity, not 100% right at your point of deployment.
Go ahead, Greg.
Mickey nailed it. That's all I would have had too. Thanks.
Next question.
Next one comes up from Marco Ken in Vienna, Austria. And Marco is interested in this. We want to create a live stream with up to 4 participants and 1 screen share. Our current idea is to use ZoomISO and an ATEM Extreme. Would you suggest going down to the hardware route, or is NDI with OBS the better solution?
Jeffrey?
So when you're using ZoomISO, you're using NDI to bring it in anyway. So that means that you're going to be bringing a lot of extra hardware in just to get it into the ATEM. And the ATEM Extreme, I suppose you have 5 channels there. I was going to say if you're going to do picture-in-picture, then maybe you could get away with just doing the ATEM. But if you're definitely bringing in 5 screens, you go from there. If you're doing NDI, OBS is not where I would go. I'd spend a little bit of money to get some other software switcher like a vMix or an eCam that would allow, that has native ZoomISO support in there, and it gives you the ability to bring it in from there and work from there. So those are the things I would do.
Guy?
Yeah, if you already have a Mac and you just want to give this a whirl, jump into the Mimo Live Discord in our Office Hours Discord. And there's a meeting in there that has these 8 talking heads, and you can go ahead and log in, download ZoomISO's trial version, and switch it to record instead of live stream. And you can pull down the 4 feeds that you need, so you could run it and test it on your machine. You could also then try out Mimo Live, which also has a 30-day free trial. So those are 2 ways that you can try it. We don't have the screen share running, but that's something I could ask Oliver to turn on, and maybe we can have it so you can punch that in as well. So you could try a load on, even a low-end $500 Mac Mini or something like that. But yeah, I would go Mimo Live and go NDI. That's the way I would go. But yeah, if you do want to go the hardware route, just like we do in this show, you can use the Sonnet box, which I have one right here with a Blackmagic card in it, and you can go and pull those out SDI and into an SDI-based switcher if you want to go that route. But the cheapest version is just what I mentioned. And go ahead and beat up on it. That's why we have this 1080p meeting going on so that you guys can test.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd say it depends. Like if you have any sort of video production or switching facility already available to you, or if you already have an ecosystem of hardware-based tools, then I would certainly go that route so you can utilize the investments you've already put in place. But if not, I'd play around with, as you mentioned, OBS, and then down the line, perhaps consider upgrading to something like vMix to give you more capabilities and also professional support.
Professional support from vMix? Sorry. Not that I'm bitter. So anyway, one thing I was going to show you is this is how I do the shows for Michael Krasny as well as the Fireside Chats. I'm using Mimo Live. This is what it looks like. And so what you'll see here is through here is this is all my layers that I have set up. And then what I do is I basically set these up with I have these layer sets. So I can basically, if you're watching over here, I have different layer sets that I can simply fire up. There's my countdown clock. There's that's me. That's what's coming in. It's a loop. But then you can see that it's kind of animated, and I've got all these. And I could easily do up to 4. Now I am actually, and this is for a question to pop up. We have with Mukana, we can pop up a lower third if we need to, and then we can go to the end. And that's a very simple show. But you can make it a lot more complicated with those layer masks. The key is, and I was trying to share this, I don't think I'm going to quite get it up for you as quickly as I wanted to. Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this here. Let's see here. And if I go to this here, let's see. Sorry, this is, I was moving too fast here. So what I have when I'm actually doing the show and when I'm doing the fireside chat, I need to have an interface. Looking at this would not be something that I can really do during a live show to make that actually work. So what I actually do here is, if I look at this here, I will, this is what my interface looks like. So I simply just tap on these buttons. And so I built this. This is a memo interface. And so I can very quickly build these out to make those things happen. And that's how I kind of fire everything up to make it all work. And so I find it to be very effective for the kind of show that I'm doing there. You could easily do it with 4. Now, I use ZoomISO separately. And the reason I do that is to kind of separate out. I'm grabbing a bunch of audio feeds. I'm grabbing a bunch of, now I do record in Vimeo. I record the ISOs of every person that's in the show, as well as the program for the show, as well as streaming it. And even with all of that stuff, my computer is sitting at about 55% capacity. So it's a little high, but not overly high. And I find it to be a very effective solution to make that actually work. I will say, though, that most of my shows tend to sit in hardware. And the reason for that is that you can keep on adding things to it by just simply buying more pieces of hardware. so I can simply, when you have a computer, you can get to a certain level, but how far you scale starts to be a little compressed inside the computer. Whereas with a hardware solution, you tend to be able to just keep adding things by adding more pieces of hardware to it. So it allows us to kind of scale up. So those are some things to think about. I will say that if you're on a Mac, I would not use OBS as a solution. I wouldn't consider OBS on a Mac a production solution. I think that on a PC it could be fine. If you're on a PC, also vMix is there. If you're on a Mac, though, I think, and then remember that you won't be using NDI to go out. If you are using hardware, you would use a Sonnet box, and you'd have all 4 or up to 8 outputs in SDI that you put into your ATEM Extreme, if you have an ATEM Extreme with SDI. Which I would recommend. If you're going to do this, and want to keep on scaling up, I'd really think about an ATEM Mini Extreme SDI with a Sonnet box. You're going to see it's actually lower impact on your home computer. So you use that ISO to push that out. So there's a couple options there. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. Has anyone ever used a MacBook Pro or iPad as an extended display using universal control for production? I'm thinking of having Mimo Live on the extended display and the content I'm streaming on my main display.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I've played around with it, but I find using an iPad as merely a display as a waste of an iPad. So I'd probably recommend investing in. If you don't need to make color decisions on it, investing in an affordable display, maybe $100 or $200 display, instead of using a full-on tablet as just a monitor.
There you go, Bill.
I used to do a good little bit of commuting. I used to have to go once a month to Los Angeles for a meeting. So I ended up doing a lot of editing on Amtrak. And this was a picture of my rig back then. So I didn't use universal control. I just used Sidecar, which is an Apple utility that if you hook a USB, a standard lightning cable between your laptop and the iPad, you can do it as an extended display. And it was really convenient to be able to essentially have a very mini version of my thing here. Universal control might give you more. The one thing I would just be concerned about is as you continue to add more and more monitors to your system, you do get to the point where your graphics card or your RAM gets full, and it leads to some instabilities in my experience. So make sure that your base laptop that you're running something like this off, or your computer, is pretty beefy. Because as you keep adding displays to things and it has to fill more and more pixels, you can slow down your system. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I'd agree with Mickey. There's a lot of little monitors that are USB-C powered, as well as taking I have one right in front of me here. This will take a USB-C, it's touchscreen, and it's a touchscreen with USB-C and takes the video in via the USB-C, and it's about $150. It doesn't have a logo on it. I was looking for it. I can't remember where I bought it. Anyway, it's not very expensive, and I would definitely, that's a pretty good solution instead of the iPad. And again, if you're using Vimeo Live, I would be building an interface like I showed you just a second ago on my iPad, which is transformational. Like, I just wish every edit app had some version of that where I can build just easily, and I'm talking about just easy, just drag. I just select the function, it pops up as a window, and I just decide how big I want it, and I'm done. I think that's what I'd be doing with the iPad. Next question.
Tony in Leeds in the UK has another QR code question for us. In this case, I want to use an external USB microphone on an iPhone with any of Google Meet, Zoom, or Microsoft Teams. I have one that works with other apps. None of the main conferencing apps seem to support it. Help?
Mickey?
I don't know about the other applications, but say with Zoom, I know class-compliant USB audio interfaces and USB microphones work directly with Zoom. A trick with iOS and iPadOS devices is to make sure the application is fully closed before you plug in the interface or the USB mic. Plug in the microphone and then launch the app, and it should work within Zoom at least. I don't know about the others.
Good, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it sounded like if it works with the other apps, it will work with Zoom. There were a handful of USB microphones at the beginning, older microphones that didn't work with iPad, but this doesn't sound like the case. It sounds more like a cabling issue at this point. Maybe if you're going through some sort of dock, just switch out the dock, just use a straight up adapter and see if that works first, and clean out your USB port. Sometimes the simple problems are the easiest to fix.
Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York is up next. Considering 2 Blackmagic cameras for a small remote kit, which models and lenses would you pick for starters?
Good, Mickey.
You don't mention specifically what these remote kits would be used for, and but so I'd probably go with a pair of zoom lenses. Since you're quite limited in space and want to don't have the ability to bring say a full complement of primes, I'd probably go with Zeiss's compact zoom line of lenses. They have three different models here, and I would probably go with the 28 to 80, the 70, and the 70 to 200 to give you a nice range of zoom there. Another option, which is a single lens with a larger range, is the lightweight zoom, which is a 21 to 100. But the two compact zooms from Zeiss do really well, and they're nice and sharp.
Oh, Jeffrey?
So you also didn't mention if you're going to actually have somebody there, or if this is a drop kit where you send it out to somebody and they have to set it up to do anything. It also depends on how far or near this kit's going to be. Usually, if you can get away with like a 50 millimeter lens, if you're only a few feet away from the subject, the Zeiss lenses, as Mickey was talking about, are perfect as well. But those are some factors because they're going to have to do the manual adjustments, if anything, when it comes to anything with a zoom. So keep that in mind if there is nobody that's manning the camera.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it depends, like you said, on what you're going to be. If it's going to be a remote zoom kit set up for somebody calling into Zoom with a couple of cameras, and you're going to go into like an ATEM switcher, the Blackmagic, the Micro Studio 4K G2. If these would be if the cameras are just going to be locked off and they're not going to be operated, so that you could, since these don't have monitors, viewfinders on them, you'd have to hook up an external monitor to aim it or bring it into a switcher, obviously. So if they're going to be lock-offs and you're connecting to an ATEM switcher, those would be a good choice. You could connect either over SDI or over HDMI. And then I think you can send controls and control those cameras from the switcher. As far as zoom, I'd get a short zoom, like a 14 to 45, something like that, that would give you a wide angle for if you're going to be close, like mounting them with just a couple of feet away looking back at you like we are in the Zoom calls right now. And it would get you up to a 45, which give you a nice normal size lens for a fairly good portraiture, a little bit longer. So something like that would be a good choice. And they're small and run on 12 volts, and they can be packed easily into carry-on size luggage.
Good guy.
Yeah, I'm looking at picking up a couple of these Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pros. They're the full frame version with the L mount. Blackmagic's fire sailing them right now. There's a couple left in the channel that are 40% off. So normally $2,500 and down to $1,575 today. You can find them at the major retailers, and then I'd pair that with a 16 to a 35. If I needed autofocus, then I would probably go over to the Sony line and go FX30 plus something in that similar vein. But a lot of people are very happy with that purchase right now. They're clearing out inventory for the new Pixis stuff. So I would strongly look at that. I'm even looking at my fingers on the B&H cart, like if I were to buy one. So you just got to make sure that you're up for buying L mount glass, or I already have the MC21, which is the L mount to EF adapter. So keep that in mind as well. That adapter is like $180.
Yeah, I think right now the Blackmagic cinema camera is the best deal for a full frame sensor out there. As far as a new camera goes. Remember that the cinema cameras, I don't believe, can be shaded by the switcher. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm pretty sure that those they don't tie together with the switcher. So if you're doing it live, I believe that was a problem we had with the 12K, and I believe that it followed
6K.
along with this.
You had the 6K,
sure?
Alex. Yeah, the 6K can be shaded with.
No.
Yeah.
This is the cinema camera 6K.
Oh.
So this is the full frame. It's a different chip, and just check that carefully. The 6K, all the 6Ks do, absolutely. We do that all the time. But I believe that I'm not 100% sure because I haven't tested the camera, but I'm not sure that it's shadable by the. It's shadable by the switcher. I think I had a conversation about this. but I'm not 100% sure. So, but make sure to check that. Otherwise, that's a great camera. The only challenge you'll have is if you send it as a remote kit and someone has to sit in front of it and do it without you having an operator there, then you really need an autofocus. Like that's why I have a Sony. I still use Blackmagic for a variety of different shoots that I do. I also use Aries and Sonys and lots of other things. But my web cameras are Sonys at this point, and the reason for that is because I don't want to get up and try to figure out my autofocus. And so and if you're sending it out to someone, it's difficult to do that. The only way we've really made that work is we have a bunch of 6Ks that we used as remote cameras, and what we did is we sent it out with a Mac Mini that we could remote into, and then what we do is we open up the Bluetooth app, and then we can work on the camera while we're talking to them. But it's a little tricky. Next question.
Peter Rosato of Las Vegas, Nevada. Panelists' thoughts on the LED volume presented here, and he's got a link to it.
Go, Bill.
It looks very impressive. I took a little bit of that tour. I mean, it's a huge facility. It is a giant wall. It looks like it's beautifully professionally wired and the rest of that. The only thing I thought, just as someone who shoots a lot, was it's just a flat wall. The floor is always of concern to me as a videographer when I come into something and I'm going, okay, what is my top to bottom full person shot? And if you're going to be coming in and building out some sort of floor or doing something underneath it, I think this would be ideal for high volume, fast shooting. I remember being so impressed when we were at Cinegear the first year. They had a young woman who was a rock climbing model, and she was literally on her face on the floor, but because of the angle of the motion-controlled camera, it looked like she was hanging 1,000 feet in the air. And then what impressed me so much is that in an instant, that robotic camera, as she stood up and held onto a rope that somebody was holding on, the camera moved to another position that was totally believable in the space of 5 seconds. That would have been a huge change in real-world production to get those two angles. They were able to do it with that LED wall and a motion camera rig in 10 seconds. I thought, man, there's production efficiency. It's amazing.
Go, Jeffrey.
I thought it was very impressive until the computer crashed. And of course, they showed that because, that's always a fun little point of YouTube. We went to Wari Studios during NAB, and we got to see a wall like this, and it was very, very impressive. The one thing that I noticed that they had, if you were very close to the wall, you'd start to see the moire from the LEDs, and so that's that's a reason why you'd want to be more towards the center. But they were having a lot of problems, and he mentioned that because they have LEDs right above them, and of course 360. But the going in the center, the audio was just horrible. And I think one of the reasons why, as Bill kind of alluded to, was the floor. They didn't have any carpeting, whereas Wari had some sort of carpeting on the ground that could help with a little bit of the sound control. But for the most part, I'd love to have one of these in my house. I'd have no space for that, of course. It's just one of those things where you just have to be very careful. If you want to see the Wari Studios one, they're going to be doing a game show, which is going to be on the ABC network with Kevin Bacon this summer, and that's all their production, and it'll be pretty interesting to see how that works.
They didn't move a smaller LED wall into the old 3210 where I was before, because it would have required more than the 6,000 amps that were already available. so anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
Bit power hungry.
Yeah, you gotta take that into account when you're putting up a video wall of this size. If you look at this thing, it's 75 feet in diameter, which is huge, and it's got a big concrete floor. And what Jeffrey was pointing out is that these things are kind of an audio nightmare. I talked to Sean Holden, who was the sound mixer on the first season of Mandalorian, and working with that volume. And because it's a parabolic reflector, if you stand on the focal point, it can create very strange audio anomalies in there, and using directional microphones, it's problematic.
Yeah.
So you're going to run into a lot of audio problems. So increase your looping budget for ADR.
I was gonna say, this is an ADR. This is I don't think Mandalorian's using a lot of captured sound.
They've got helmets on, so they just record all the audio. They write the script after they shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
They can change it anything they want.
Yeah, exactly. What I've seen so far is that there was this huge expansion of these LED wall stages, and we're starting to see kind of a bit of a contraction. So hopefully they'll be successful at it. As Hollywood contracts, some of the demand for the screens have contracted, and I have a couple friends actually that have had to close their LED wall stages in LA, where they were right downtown. So I think that it's a little, the market has gotten, especially in the Hollywood area, because a lot of a higher percentage of movies have left the state, is more challenging to build there. So it'd be great to see. Maybe we can get a tour. Maybe we'll do office hours from their space, because I would love to help them promote it, and I would love to play with it. So we'll see what we can do. Maybe we'll reach out to them and see if we can't do a tour. Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York is up next. Recently started venturing out into the world with my post-COVID Zoom setup. Any tips on how to travel with your cables, displays, converters, power supplies, etc. in your remote kits?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was looking at a Pelican. If you can fit it all into a Pelican 1510, that's the Pelican case that fits in overhead storage in most airlines. So you can carry it on. And what you might do is, I haven't checked the size, is put a Mac Mini in there, if this is for remote Zoom calls, and get you a couple of these portable, these nice runoff USB-C, and mount them vertically on either side of maybe a Blackmagic Micro Studio inside, and put two of them on either side of the camera in that lid. Mount them in the lid. You'd have to figure out some way to hold them in there. And then put your Mac Mini in the bottom, or some other, maybe a small NUC computer if you want to use Windows. And then you could put an Atem Mini in there too. So you'd have all that inside the case, have the lid flip down, and have everything in the lid that for two screens and a camera in the lid, and then you could have a second remote camera out if you want to.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I agree with the Pelicans. I think that's a great idea. I've got a stack of them here. But I would, Scott's not very clear about what type of, what he's doing when he's venturing out, and how much he needs to put in it. I would put cables in one and displays in another, converters, power supplies, and I'd have them either separated with the foam. I know there's a bunch of companies that have been mentioned before that do custom inserts for Pelicans, but also have any displays and your converters and stuff in separate pouches. Just keep them separated so they don't damage each other.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I just want to make a quick comment on cables and weight. You know, one of the heaviest things I used to have to travel with was my cable loop thing. I had one of those Velcro straps that held like 10 rolls of cable, and I used to flip-flop it back in and put it in a Pelican case and travel with it. But that was one of my heaviest bags, just from the pure amount of copper. And I remember the first time I was shooting with the Atomos Ninja out in the field, feeding it with a camera signal, and the 12G HDI cable that they had sent along with the camera was incredibly small and thin. And I thought, digital cables now are getting less bulky. So one of the things I look for when I'm buying cables now is how small can I get away with and still do the job? Still have the proper amount of shielding, but whatever the job is, can I get something smaller? Because cables can be one of your biggest weight problems and travel problems. So just a note about that.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Depending on whether you're flying or you're just going out and getting in your vehicle and driving out, there's a lot of different things that you can do. The one thing that I always do when I go traveling in the flying case is that any cable that is detrimental for production has to be in that box. If there's a cable like, let's say, a TRRS cable, I can always find a Guitar Center and replace that. A power supply or a power strip, I can always go to a Walgreens or CVS and get a power strip. Not the best one, but in a pinch, it becomes detrimental. And therefore, it's something that doesn't need to be in that kit because you really have to worry about the weight. When it comes to traveling in a vehicle, Pelicans are nice, but they get very heavy. I've noticed that Amazon has these, they're like little bags that zip up and they can hold a lot of stuff like cables. My PTZ cameras are in there because they're in their individual cases, and they just basically have a little handle that you can lift up and put it in. They're completely collapsible, and then you can definitely organize that. Another thing is I do some sort of coding system, some color coding system, because as you're trying to set things up, you don't want to have to figure out, well, where did that wart come from? Where did that cable come from? Where was I going to use that cable? So having it completely tagged, so you know that this end goes in here, this end goes in here, makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, this is mine. This fits into a Pelican case. So I've got two of the Nanlite 6Cs. Two small tripods that'll sit on the desk, a little ATEM switcher that is my interface, as well as the ability to go to a safe frame. I have this little, it's on a little stand to raise my laptop up. I've got this is my FX30, a good audio interface, the US Minix Pre 3, and I use a Countryman in this case, or a DPA, one or the other. And it all fits into a Pelican case, except for the computer and the iPad, which go in my backpack. Next question.
Next one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. ASUS Copilot Plus Vivobook S15 and Qualcomm Snapdragon X Elite 12-core processor with 18-plus hour battery life. Copilot, the new trend, and he's got a link there to the system.
Go, Jeffrey.
I've been seeing a lot of stuff about using the Qualcomm chips and how it's a great competitor to MacBook Air. What I like is the fact that you can actually use an external graphics card and then bring in more. And I can't wait for these to be in some sort of desktop style. So an NVIDIA card like a 4090 or anything newer can be put in there and used, so you can really set up your own in-home AI system if you wanted to. There's a lot of laptops out there now that from Lenovo, from HP, I'm going to get one next week, that you could run a full AI and do some basic, not only questions and answers, but also a little bit of graphics creation in there. So it's really exciting to see how this is going to move things forward and compete in the non-Intel spectrum.
Next question.
Clive Ludford in Kingston, Jamaica comes up next for a freelancer taking an audio feed from a mixer at a venue. Would an Ethercon breakout box work with one channel being for the dynamic microphone and another running a shotgun microphone needing 48-volt phantom power? And he's got an Amazon link to a device.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, what Clive is talking about are these essentially breakout boxes that use a Cat5 or shielded Cat5 or shielded Ethernet cable as the snake, a 4-channel snake. This is the one that Clive linked to, Links Pro. Though the ones I've used are the ones from Radial. They call it the Catapult. Here they have a couple models of the Catapult from Radial Engineering. But another popular brand that I hear about a lot, but I haven't used myself, is the sound tools made by Dave Rat. These would work great as a low cost 4-channel snake that can be easily deployed because Ethernet cable is very easy to work with compared to full analog balanced audio snakes. I don't know. You don't mention what you plan to use the dynamic and the shotgun mic for, but assuming that two of the channels of the snake will be used for the feed from the board, I would probably go with 2 shotguns instead to be able to capture a stereo image of the room, a nice room mic to give you a sense of space, as opposed to a dynamic and a shotgun microphone.
Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I'm a little confused here about what he's asking, because he's talking about taking a feed from a board and an Ethercon breakout. So, as Mickey mentioned, there are a number of 4-channel analog Cat6 snakes out there. You can put dynamic microphones, condenser microphones, line level stuff, anything through here. It's just a hardwire snake. However, you have to use, if you're going to use power with it, it needs a shielded cable. However, if you're taking a feed from a board and you're going to take like 4 feeds from the board, 48 volts to the microphones would be provided by that console, not by yours. And if by chance you're talking about the Ethercon cable that is used for the stage snake between the mixing console and the stage, you ain't gonna tap into that at all. You can't split that off. That's highly proprietary, and so your best bet is to take outputs from the console. They will be line level outputs, and yes, you can use this kind of analog snake to get from the console to your mixer, but you won't be worried about supplying phantom power to any microphones.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, exactly what Marty and Mickey were saying. It is an analog snake. It has to be, if you're going to use something like this, shielded Cat5 or Cat6. Like Marty said, I'm not sure how you're trying to interface this, but this would be a standalone snake, not interfacing with any other Cat-based cables.
Next question.
Robin Cutshaw in Atlanta, Georgia is up next. What audio formats do you use to stream audio only to a browser on the web?
Go ahead, Mickey.
I use AAC primarily because compared to, say, MP3, it gives a higher quality to bitrate ratio compared to MP3. And also AAC supports formats larger than mono or stereo. MP3 is limited to mono or stereo, but if you want to go higher in terms of format or channel count, you may want to go with AAC.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway. Other than being overkill, is the MixPre 10 suitable for use as a basic mixer for a couple of SM58s and a guitar, routing the mix out of the analog outputs into powered speakers for a basic PA system? Portability and simplicity are priorities.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd say a MixPre is the wrong tool for the job here. A MixPre is a great field recorder, but not great for, say, mixing front of house or PA. I'd probably go with something from, say, the MG line from Yamaha or a similar analog desk. It would be more affordable than a MixPre, and it would have the appropriate tools to mix something like this. It has EQ, dynamics. So some of them have dynamics. Some of them have effects processors built in, so some reverb and delay to be able to mix a nice musical presentation.
Good. Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Mickey. The mixer that's designed for more front of house would be probably more suitable. But if you have a MixPre 10, you can get the plug-in, the musician plug-in, which is $99 that you can plug into there. It does only have 2 analog outs, the MixPre 10, and they're on TA3s. So you have to get adapters to come out. They're balanced to left and right, balanced out. So you could mix with it and get the musician plugin. The musician plugin is designed for recording and multi-tracking, and it does give you some effects. It gives you reverb and I think a couple of other DSP effects in there so that you could add those to the microphones if you need a little bit of reverb in there for your guitar or your vocals. So if you have one laying around, you could use it with a musician's plugin.
As one does. I just have a mixed pretend laying around. Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, I agree with Mickey that this may be the wrong tool. When you're working with live speakers, things you need to think about are EQing the speakers to the room to make sure that they're flat, being able to apply notch filters to kill feedback so that you can get more gain. Things that devices like the MixPre were just not built to do. If you want to get gain before feedback, if you want to get clarity, you need to work on tuning the speakers to the room, as well as worrying about their just basic mix levels, which is not so easy to do, especially if you want to apply any effects to the vocals or the guitars. Find a small mixer, even a software-controlled mixer like an XR18 would be a great choice. Even an XR12 for this application could be a great choice. A lot less expensive and much, much easier to use.
Next question.
Next one comes from Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas. And Danny wonders, iZotope has launched RX11, and there seems to be a major focus on production audio, specifically tools for dialogue. Comments?
Bill?
I've been using iZotope for some of my audiobook work for a while, and I'm actually kind of moving away from it a little, basically because I'm working with Mickey now, and a human brain who knows what they're doing is way more efficient than somebody who doesn't know as much trying to use a tool that is a little bit beyond them. I did just want to note that in the audiobook narrators groups, there's a lot of discussion right now. I guess Native Instruments purchased iZotope about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, and there's some chatter on there that their focus is changing a little. Maybe this is part of it toward production audio, but I think there's a lot of change going on in that system right now. So I'm going to stick with a brain rather than a tool for a while because I think the tool is changing a little bit. I'm just withholding the thought of going back toward that direction in the future unless I have to. My 2 cents.
Yeah, the focus of the RX suite from iZotope has always been more towards dialogue cleanup for location sound for narratives, unscripted programming, TV shows, and the like. So I don't see really a shift in focus. It's always been with dialogue primarily. Of course, these tools can be used for other workflows and other needs, but dialogue has always been their focus. The looking at RX11, the post-sound community mostly has been like people haven't really seen a need to upgrade from RX10. There was a nice jump in functionality between RX9 and RX10, but RX11 feels very much like a small iterative upgrade as opposed to bringing revolutionary features into the realm. So I myself I'll upgrade when I have to, or when there's a feature that I need. But in the meantime, I'll stick to what currently works. RX10 is fine.
Next question.
Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois says, audio ingenue Rick Beato asked, what is wrong with everyone? So what's your answer?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Too many lawyers. We need to eliminate some of the lawyers. A lot of the stuff that Rick does is these copyright suits, and he breaks them down and analyzes, these 4 notes were pulled from this song, and this group got sued over using those same 4 notes in their song, and he compares them all. Maybe that's what the answer is get rid of the lawyers.
Next question.
Next one comes from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. And Andy says, I'm designing Zoom booths for our Berlin office and considering the Elgato Prompter so users may have eyeline with the active Zoom speaker. Thoughts on the Elgato Prompter?
Go ahead, Courtney.
It's a reasonably priced prompter to put in front of a camera. It's fairly small, so you got to have it's got to be pretty close to the person if they're going to be able to read anything off of it. If you're just putting an eye line of your person you're talking to in it, it'll work fine for that. But be aware that the monitor is not really a monitor. It's an LCD monitor, but you can't input any signal to it. It has to be plugged into a USB-C.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I saw it at NAB. It was a great, a nice little monitor. I have a smaller monitor that I actually made, teleprompter, so I can actually see people during a Zoom call or anything like that. I do use it for some scripting, reading, and it gets hard on the eyes. Such a small one. The Elgato one makes it a little bit bigger, and then the software is pretty easy to use. They also have they were doing speed tests for reading off the prompter, and I was not doing too well on it, but you can connect it up to into any system as long as it's got a USB input into it, as Courtney said. And of course, you can use almost any camera. They were using the Facecam Pros, of course, because it was Elgato, but you can set up any type of camera. I think it's going to be a great thing for a smaller booth.
I think if you want to have any flexibility, you're not going to want to use this. you need to have a real monitor in there. Eventually, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to be able to put up notes. You're going to want to put up other things over top of the screen that they have, because that's what everybody ends up wanting to do eventually when you're having speakers in remote Zoom areas. You want to be able to put things in there. so any kind of flexibility that you want, you really need a real monitor for it. So I think for a YouTuber, I think this is a great solution to do something basic. But if you're really doing this as a group of things that you're going to administer and manage, you're going to find that, as Courtney said, that USB-C is going to be a real limiter for you. I would go up and look at, there's also bigger ones. I would look at the iCan 17-inch or 12-inch. We have the iCan 12-inch. We have 8 of them. And for that eye to eye, they're a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier, a little bit more expensive, about $800, I think, $800 or $900. But a really great solution. And if you're doing something that you need to manage over time, I would really think about that pretty seriously. Next question.
Walt Palmer in Lewis, Delaware. Last week I switched to Ubiquity firewall, which immediately caused issues uploading to Vimeo. I have since bypassed the Ubiquity by reinstalling a Cisco RV340 to the video control room. Have others had Ubiquity issues?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I've had issues with the Ubiquity products, certainly, and their support also isn't the greatest. But with your specific issue, I'd probably review the configuration of your gateway or your what do they call it there? Your Ubiquity console. Their security settings are a little vague and very simplified in terms of like how the terminology that they use and all that. But say if you go into I'm not going to cut to my screen because I don't want to share something I don't want to share. So if you go to your settings tab within your unified console settings, go to the security tab, go to suspicious activity, and there is a very vague control there that allows you to switch between auto and advanced. So take a look at all your security settings, as well as go to the system log tab and click on triggers. This will show you events that may trigger your firewall from blocking certain types of traffic, or even throttling down certain types of traffic. So take a look at your triggers. There's a log there that notes down what things it blocks.
Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Dallas, Texas says, considering getting a Synology 8-bay RackStation RS 1221 Plus, can I start with populating it with less than 8 disks and just have some open bays for future expansion? And are there any other considerations, he wonders?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. Yes, well, depending on the type of RAID that you use within your Synology box, you may be able to add more drives later down the line. If, say, you use what they call SHR or Synology hybrid RAID, you can, at a future date, add drives that are of the same size or larger than the drives that you currently have in your RAID array. This specific Synology that you mentioned, Tlaloc, does not have dedicated SSD, NVMe SSD cache drive slots. So I don't know if that's important for your workflow and you need that throughput that requires SSD cache. But you may want to look at other models that have them built in. You can add a PCI card that would give you NVMe slots, but if I need the SSD cache, I'd rather have a box that has those slots built right in, instead of relying on an add-on card.
Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York says Chat GPT 4.0 now supports integrations with Google Drive and Microsoft OneDrive, as well as uploading files. What do we think this could offer for file management and or having AI help with giving a synopsis of said files?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, first of all, I think we should seriously think about investing in storage stock because basically there's just going to be a lot of content that you could actually send up there. You'll be able to eventually you'll be able to get your presentations, and you'll want to put in graphics. You'll want to put in everything into there. So you'll definitely want to have that connection back and forth between your Google Drive, your OneDrive, and the and Chat GPT, and just lots of storage for images, creating stock images. And we're going to get into that point. They've already said that, out of all the photos that you've taken, that you don't really go back to those photos. You don't look at those photos like we used to with photo albums. In fact, you might not ever see them again. And by having AI images out there, we'll definitely have a whole bunch of clutter there. So it's going to be great, but some people are just going to have very messy drives.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I'm not sure about organizing the files on your drive necessarily. I think what it's offering you access to a series of files which you can then incorporate into creating charts and graphs based on a series of files, or the data that's stored in a series of files, taking the data in that series of files into consideration and creating charts and graphs. That seems to be what they're pushing it as. I'm not sure what other capabilities it may have, whether it'll include, if these are big, large text files that you've stored on your Google Drive or your Microsoft OneDrive, if you could incorporate the text from multiple files into a search, or to summarize all of the information in multiple files. It may allow you to do something like that.
Next question.
Clive Lunford in Kingston, Jamaica. Alex, how often have you been saved by your ISOs? If you had to choose between the Atem Mini Pro ISO versus the Osee gostream Duet, which would you choose when thinking of backup recordings?
So the answer to the first question is I've been saved often enough to do ISOs all the time. so I if something matters, I'm recording ISOs. I'm recording ISO audio, oftentimes in multiple places. I'm recording ISO video, oftentimes in multiple places. I'm recording the program in dirty program and clean program, oftentimes in different places. So when you're getting paid a lot of money to do it, you want those ISOs to be there. I haven't used the ISO on the Mini Pro often, but just because this is not how I use the Mini Pro. I have a lot of larger systems. Last night we were using, I think, 8 hyperdecks. so I think that, so those are the kind of thing that we kind of go towards for ISOs. I really don't think that the gostream is competitive with the Mini Pro. Like I don't think that the workflow is there. I got to play with it a little bit at NAB. Workmanship is not the same. I don't think the stability is going to be the same. You don't have the software integrations that are going to be the same. I just don't. And when you jump into an Atem Mini, you're jumping into an ecosystem where as you grow, you don't have to relearn anything. I really don't like the idea of not having software. I mean, like their little screen to do the configuration. Oh, I'm not enrolled. Oh, we're running out of time. Mickey, real quick.
Yeah, just to comment on ISOs, storage is cheap, failure is not.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Go ahead, Guy, real quick.
Yeah, same. Just get hyperdecks. I've seen too many people get burned by those ISOs on the Blackmagic Extremes. Don't do it.
Yeah, a lot of times we record to the cameras, we record in between from their monitors. Those are all the things that we use there to make that actually happen. We're going to be talking about wireless transmission here in just a minute, but coming up tomorrow, we actually have This Guy Edits. This is Sven Pape, and he is a ACE Award nominated editor who's cut for James Cameron, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and James Franco, and he's going to be talking to us about his approach there. On Friday, we'll talk about VPN, remote access. How do you get in there and take control? And so we'll be talking about a little bit of that on Friday. Saturday, of course, is Q&A, and Sunday's introspection. It's usually where we ask a couple more questions about what we're doing here and why, and more philosophical questions. We can still do the technical things that you're looking for, but we really focus more on the philosophical questions on Sunday. We don't stream that, so you do have to know where to find it. So you can find it if you're in the email. You'll see how to get there. Also, a quick reminder that today is the last day to sign up for the Frame.io beta. I put the announcement back in the Alex announcements. So make sure to sign up today. We're going to do a training with them actually tomorrow. So you'll get access early to Frame.io. Welcome back. And we're going to talk about wireless. We've got a couple